Today's highlighted coin is the 2025 Operation Warp Speed. In retrospect, the COVID pandemic was a despicable scam. Chris's 2025 coin, Operation Warp Speed, reflects that reality. The vast majority of people killed by COVID-19 were very old people who probably would have died anyway. But the worst part of the scam was that thousands of healthy young people who were not vulnerable to the virus itself suffered irreparable physical harm from the vaccine itself. This occurred because the clot shot vaccine, or more appropriately, the gene therapy, was dictatorially and diabolically injected into everyone, including the best of our best young military men, despite their lack of lethal vulnerability to COVID-19. In 2023, Germany did a regional study of deaths from COVID-19, and they found that the average age of those who died from the virus during the pandemic was 84 years old. Not 10, not 20, not even 60, but 84 years old. When you consider that the average lifespan for a German citizen is 81 years old, COVID-19 posed no health risk at all. It's almost amusing when you consider that the average person who died from COVID-19 in Germany had already lived longer than expected. The German health institutions did another and broader study in 2024 and got the same results. They found that of the 183,000 recorded COVID-19 deaths, 118,938 were people 80 years old or older. Old people die. Where was the unprecedented death threat posed by COVID-19 that necessitated a complete shutdown of our country? The answer? There wasn't any. It was simply a useful tool used on useful idiots by insidious individuals to advance a convoluted Machiavellian conspiracy. The studies done in the United States showed the same results as Germany. The majority of people who died from COVID-19 were old and already at risk of experiencing a natural death. On the other hand, and despite the public outcry, young people with fully functioning immune systems didn't die, nor did children. Both groups were basically immune to COVID-19 death. In fact, the global death rate only rose by 1.5 years from 2019 to 2020. That's within the margin of error which virtually negates the supposed rise in deaths. In fact, the COVID-19 death effect on global lifespans was so minuscule that it didn't in any way negate the advances made over the previous 72 years. The global lifespan had increased by 23 years from 1950 to 2021, and it remained so both during and after the pandemic. It was all a colossal scam. But the damage the vaccine itself did to young people's health was another story. Rather than being at risk from COVID-19 virus itself, young people were more at risk from the vax. The vaccine unnecessarily and unforgivably injured thousands of young people, especially young men. The damage was mostly to their hearts, included myocarditis, pericarditis, thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. One might argue that those risks were worth the threat that COVID-19 posed, but since the virus posed no threat to young people, the collateral damage the vaccine caused to these young people was unconscionable. It was literally the crime of the century. Upon reflection, there is no doubt that COVID-19 was co-opted by the worst of humanity and exploited to serve the globalist view that the West should be destroyed by any means necessary and at any cost. These were heartless, dishonest, and despicable people posing as trustworthy pandemic experts, health professionals, and concerned politicians, while the public was simply used as pawns in the game of global domination. To make matters worse, the good doctors who tried to expose the conspiracy were publicly reviled. Despite the righteous smoke and mirrors that surrounded the pandemic, it was obvious to many of these good doctors that COVID-19 wasn't unusually deadly. But just as occurs in communist countries, they were silenced, banned, or threatened with suspension if they continued to express their honest opinions. This blackout of accurate information just led to the proliferation of more lies and cover-ups. As Chris's coin, Operation Warp Speed, infers, it would eventually be understood, although at the cost of young people's mental and physical health, that we were instead the victims of biological warfare aimed to undermine Western civilization's world dominance. And the deeper that reasonable men dug into the facts, the more obvious it became that we were being led disastrously astray by our own professionals, and that they were being backed in this effort by our arch-enemy, the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. Treason, conspiracy, sedition, high crimes and misdemeanors? Yes, they were guilty of all of them, and they should be charged, tried, and imprisoned for all of their hideous crimes against humanity. These people were the most reprehensible, loathsome, and unscrupulous professional miscreants the United States has ever produced. Trusted traitors one and all, with Fauci leading the assault. If we've learned one thing from the economic, mental health, and physically destructive catastrophe inflicted on Americans during the 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's that we cannot trust China under any circumstances. We shouldn't accept anything from them, nor should we provide anything to them. And just so no one ever forgets what the Chinese and their American co-conspirators did to America, we should change the name of China's only political party from CCP, Chinese Communist Party, to CCCP, Chinese Communist COVID Party, and then slam the door in their face. Chris Duane issues 2 new proofs each week, which are available for a limited time. These proofs come in a presentation box with the certificate of authenticity, as shown here. They are also available in BU, brilliant uncirculated versions, which are only stamped once, and they come in copper as well. You can check out all Chris's Silver Shield proofs and all things Silver Shield on ChrisDuaneSilverShieldCoins.com.